The original, just external inspiration for that was this article that I read in Indian Express, by the way. Most of the furniture there is from a house that I actually lived in. So there's a bed there are sewing machines there. All of that stuff I've slept on that bed, or I've played on those sewing machines. I think I can very confidently say that I have not met anyone in this town who loves cinema more than probably Dibakar, or Anurag, comes really close to that too. But Dibakar always insisted to have that scooter ride in the end. It was like, wo ek shot dal do. I was like, but it might give hope or whatever. We are here with the perpetrator and I want to end with the perpetrator. It was nahi dal do. For a longest time we kept arguing. That is different here from, let's say, the Hollywood independent film system, is that they have better actors.
Hi, welcome to Screen.
Hi.
So it's 10 years of Titli, and this month, and I remember that when the poster first came out, it was very intriguing. Also, because if you just hear the name of the movie, then it sounds, because Titli represents a lot of like feminine energy, colors, and um, in terms of like symbolically, it also represents transformation. And coming from a YRF, coming as a YRF film, you felt like it's going to be something colorful and like they do. I think even Shivani Raghuvan, she told me a few years ago that when she auditioned and she was told that it's a film for YRF, Titli, and she thought that it's okay, na, ab main heroine ban jaungi. And then comes what we all saw and loved. But what was the idea behind that title? Where did that title come from? Did it come later? Was it the starting point?
No, I think the title came pretty early. It was there while we were writing it. I think the first time we popped on the name Titli by itself was while we were writing, very early on. I think हम 2-pager 5-pager ही लिख रहे थे तब शरद और मैं, और हम दोनों का एक्सपीरियंस ये था that in certain specific areas, especially East Delhi, in galiyon mein, people are hardly called by their original names. They always have nicknames. So we were thinking of nicknames for all the 3 characters. तो I remember because किसी को असली नाम सुना ही नहीं पूरी पिक्चर में हुआ है, तो बावले का नाम प्रदीप है, असली नाम प्रदीप है. तो वी वर थिंकिंग, अच्छा ये इसको क्या बोलेंगे, प्रदीप बावला. ऐसे ही तितली का असली नाम रोहित है, सो रोहित तितली. एंड विक्रम का आई डोंट रिमेम्बर नाउ क्या था, but we were thinking of pseudonyms for the 3 brothers, especially because they're a gang, whatever. So the name Titli popped up, and then immediately I think the next couple of days we thought, yeah, this is a very good title also for the film. But I think always रोहित तितली वाले कैरेक्टर के लिए जब सोच भी रहे थे नाम, I was very aware of how fragile this boy was inside that house. So we wanted to find that sort of a name for him, which obviously, because he was a protagonist, should end up saying something about the film too.
I wanted to ask you that, was the setup, kind of the premise, also influenced somewhere by Shyam Benegal's, because that also has, I mean, the elder brothers are all a little patriarchal. The youngest one, Nasiruddin Shah, his name is, I think, Bhola. So he's the one who's the most fragile and wants to get away from that world. And that is also represented by his equation with his wife, Shabana Azmi's character. Was that ever?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, for me, it was such a personal film. It was, I was so closely attached to it that I don't think I was seeing anything else. The original, just external inspiration for that was this article that I read in Indian Express, by the way. It was about a gang of carjackers who were brothers. That was the first seed, which I thought, acha, ye interesting hai. But then I started saying, okay, why am I fine? And then it went where it went. But I think after that point, it was so personal for me, the film, and I was putting so much of myself in it कि वो किसी और फिल्म का आने का सवाल उठा ही नहीं कभी.
No, that's just an interesting
Yeah.
coincidence.
Yeah, but now that you mention
Yeah.
there are certain similarities probably.
It's Titli set in Delhi, and I was talking to Amit Sial a couple of months ago, and I also asked him about that. It's going to be 10 years, and he thought that his only, like his most striking memory from that time was when they used to approach the set, and the whole approach, he used to see the people who were there, who they're playing, and he was saying that I felt so much deprivation, and like they, like I won't blame these people for robbing a bank or breaking into a house, because that's how they live. And even he said that his girlfriend at the time came to meet him, and she saw it in his eyes that he has changed because of what he saw. You grew up in Delhi, so do you have any visuals of those areas that kind of stayed with you?
Again,
Yeah.
I mean, it was not like I was watching some of these spaces in a peripheral sort of way. For a good few years, I was part of those spaces. So my experience of those spaces was as as a participant in many ways also, right? Yes, I would grant that I was also slightly privileged. Like, my parents were beginning to do a little well in what they were doing, and a few years later they managed to buy their first house in Patparganj, which is then it's like 1 degree of separation. So here's Mandavli, and you literally bicycle 3 minutes and you're in Patparganj. So I got that few degrees of separation from it, but मैंने बहुत पास से वो सब अंदर से देखा है. तो my observations, I mean, there are too many to describe, I like one of my aunts had a house in Mandavli, and there were 3 steps to take into the house, and underneath the drain was uncovered and was completely clogged. And one time I fell into the drain because the stair gave way. It was a stone thing, and the stone gave way and my foot fell inside. And so after that point, just the idea of climbing those steps again and being careful. I remember, I mean, I'm talking about when I'm probably 6 or 7, so very young kid, but I was really scared of those stairs. And again, there are too many images, there was, and some of those images I try to recreate in the film. For example, the house where Vikram's wife lives with her new boyfriend and her little daughter. Most of the furniture there is from a house that I actually lived in. So there's a bed there, there are sewing machines there. All of that stuff, I've slept on that bed, or I've played on those sewing machines. So there's tons of images, memories that I have from those spaces. Not to mention all the boys, playing kanche with the boys there, or just playing cricket with your that कपड़े धोने वाला bat, उसको पंजाबी में थापी बोलते हैं. I don't know what it's called in Hindi or English, but the thing. So yeah, it's just endless.
The cricket bit reminds me of when they're, I think, crossing the road on their bike, and I think Ranveer Shaurya says that, hey, 1963 side over, or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're like just throwaway lines like that.
Yeah.
But what do you, since you worked with Dibakar Banerjee before that, and also on Oye Lucky Lucky Oye, his representation of Delhi in that film was also, there was a little bit of lawlessness, but there was a lot of humor. What have you, while working with him, what have you kind of learned and unlearned while working with Dibakar before you became a director?
I think I've said this in the past also. Just the biggest thing to learn from Dibakar was his rigor, his pure rigor. and pure love for film. I think I can very confidently say that I have not met anyone in this town who loves cinema more than probably Dibakar, or Anurag, comes really close to that too. But Dibakar's love for cinema is a very particular kind of, I would say, almost a devotion to cinema, and a certain, uh, a certain divine sort of uh, journey that he likes to take with every aspect, but especially writing. So, just to learn in those years, not only on Oilaki, but on LSD, and not only on LSD, but even with the writing of Titli. Even though Sharat and me were writing the film, but the feedback that we got from him on each draft, was invaluable, because he could end up turning around and saying, this scene is not there yet. You need, sometimes he might not know what to do, but he would say, you need more work on this. And of course, there were many specific things that he said also, but just the rigor, just the, thing of constantly pushing, that was the biggest lesson for me. The focus was the biggest lesson for me. And just that man's love for cinema is, it's infectious. Even though मैं खुद film school से था, I myself feel like I love film to quite an extent. But yeah.
Was there anything you had to unlearn also while you were making a film? That
another thing, sorry to cut you, but another thing that I also was another big lesson for me working with Dibakar was how calm he was on set. He would make the day fly with complete composure. And before that, my learning was slightly different. With my parents, my dad used to have a little bit of a temper, so the sets always were very chaotic. So as a young kid stepping into this, I was like, oh, you can shoot like this also. You don't have to be belligerent or whatever. What I had to unlearn, नहीं यार, unlearn का तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. You always meet people, you pick up the best that you can, and you integrate and you try to build something new out of that. तो ऐसा unlearn wala, तो I can't think of anything.
But what was, if you can recall, any specific feedback that he gave for Titli that you incorporated and that kind of made sense?
Many things, many things. But if you ask me one thing, I have a very particular memory that that was the thing we probably most argued about, and he won in the end because he was the producer, not because he enforced it. But there's this clear memory of, I always wanted to finish the film on the last top shot of Titli after he apologizes to Neelu, and he says da 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 da, she says haath mein rod dalegi, and you end the film there. But Dibakar always insisted to have that scooter ride in the end. It was like, wo ek shot dal do. I was like, but it might give hope or whatever. We are here with the perpetrator, and I want to end with the perpetrator. It was nahi dal do. For a longest time, we kept arguing. And then eventually he played his producer card, and he said, okay, it's fine if you don't want to use it later. You shoot it for me. You keep it and you decide later. So eventually we did shoot that shot, and it was in the film. But many other small, beautiful, small and big contributions.
What do you think that ending, that shot at the end did to the film?
I think it gives I think it was built to give some sort of hope. The way I looked at that image was, I tried to subvert that image and through it say, even though he has convinced her, but where do we think they are going? These two damaged people, where do you think these guys will end up? Was my gaze on that image. But yeah.
Yeah. You've said that it's autobiographical in the sense that you had a difficult relationship with your father. Was that the reason why you also cast him? Was that also a symbolic, or he's just a good actor?
Yeah, that was possibly actually no. The main reason why eventually I agreed to make that choice, and again, I was not fully convinced about that choice, because I had such a fraught relationship with him. In fact, he was also not convinced with the choice till the
So
last
who was
moment.
convinced?
I'll tell you. I'll come to it. So,
Yeah.
both of us were not convinced because we had such a fraught relationship. It was going to be my first film. I remember him saying to me personally at one point, saying, "तुम्हारी पहली पिक्चर है, मैं कुछ गड़बड़ नहीं करना चाहता जिसकी वजह से तुम बाद में बोलो आपकी वजह से हुआ. So let me not do this." But what convinced me was that my associate director at the time and also casting director, very close collaborator, Atul Mungia, we had very long discussions. We tested a lot of people. We were not quite convinced. I remember at one point this idea came up of, he's an actor, why don't we cast him? I vehemently opposed it, and him turning around and over long discussions, finally him saying, listen, there is great merit in doing this because the rhythms that you're trying to create, the physical rhythms which are unsaid, not the dialogue, the bodies that you're trying to create in this film, he already knows those rhythms. You won't have to do much. And I remember that was the convincing part. I was like, yes, okay, there's this argument is valid. And that's the point, where I said, okay, let's go ahead and do it, and we'll figure ways to deal with other stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting because he really doesn't do much in terms of the plot, but that, I mean, he's around and he's not really in the midst, but his presence is all across.
It was a difficult part because it was such a silent part. ऐसे आप देखो तो उस कैरेक्टर के 2 ही सीन हैं फिल्म में, प्रॉपर सीन्स 2 ही हैं, 2.5. Okay, if you want to count the fight with the first fight in the gully, he is
doesn't
there.
Have a speaking part.
Yeah, but other than that, he has the scene where he talks to Neelu of Vaishno Devi gaye the, and towards the end, Suarapo. Those are the 2 really. So it was really important for the rhythm of that violence to be present in the image, which I felt was,
just the fact that when they're having that fight at the start, and you can see him around, and when the only close-up shot I think of him is doing this, and that just tells you about not just him but the family, the world, and everything. But now that he's no more, how do you look back at that relationship with your dad?
I don't like very much to romanticize things. कहने को तो ऐसे मुझे बहुत लोगों ने ये भी बोला है कि just the act of making the film would have been some sort of a catharsis for you. No, it wasn't. It was what it was. It was more than, I think. I think I had processed quite a bit of the relationship already in my head, heart, soul, whatever you want to call it, and that had led to the process of making of the film. So yeah, I mean, you have a life, you live your life, and your life is lived the way you live it, and it's done, so things are not going to change. So I don't think I have a different perspective on what happened or who he was, because I loved him at the beginning also, when I had the fraught relationship, and I've loved him since. And the only thing I probably, I won't even say regret, is the only thing is that I couldn't meet him before he passed away because COVID. I was stuck here and he went to the hospital, and by the time I got to Delhi, he was already in the hospital and he was unconscious. So I couldn't meet him before he went away. Maybe that's the thing that I miss. But yeah.
Your mom's also an actor, and I know that she was around, unlike in Titli where there's no female presence at all. So what do you think? I mean, what is their relationship with that void of a female in the house? Had there been a female, would things be different? Like, had their mother lived on, or would it still be the same?
It's an interesting question. I would like to believe and hope that they would have been different. Um, Having said that, I've seen houses, families where it isn't, in spite of the feminine presence being there in the house. But yes, I would hope that for them it would have been different if the mother was there.
Mhm. Because even when how they talk to Shivani's character, they're all like trying to be very loving, but they at the end of the day they will do what they want, irrespective of how and what she's feeling about it.
Yeah.
So they're kind of immune to that female. I mean, they appreciate it that there's someone.
It's slightly strange because in a way, Bavla is a feminine presence within that house. And so women in that, maybe in that class, or maybe, regardless of class, women have a way of being able to tackle all that masculinity and all that testosterone. तो वो कुछ करके पीछे से अपनी बात बहुत तरह से करवा लेती हैं. To an extent, you see Bavla pull some strings also in that sense. So to your point of वो in spite of the women सुनते नहीं है, वो सामने से अगर this is what I've experienced in the milieu that the film is specifically set in. I'm not saying this as a generalization. I'm saying वो सामने से belligerence से नहीं मानते, but उसका तरीका एक और develop हुआ है in those areas where women have another way of getting things done. And they hold a certain degree of power by themselves, some of which you see Shivani's character wield in her own way, or for that matter you see Vikram's wife wield in her own way. So women actually are very interesting creatures in that milieu.
Yeah, especially when they're like pushed against the wall.
Absolutely.
And how they kind of bounce back in their own ways.
Yeah.
I don't think that Yash Raj Films has made a gritty a film after Titli. But what do you think about that, and do you feel that big producers not supporting indie films? I mean, how did that happen? Was it a miracle and now it can't happen anymore?
I hope not. I mean, but this, yeah, you're right that there is no sustainable system for independent cinema. There was probably in the early 70s, late 70s with NFDC with their best years, and then perhaps those mid 2000s, 2010s, we felt a little hope that something might happen, but things have just gotten tougher and tougher for independent cinema. Having said that, I would also add that maybe they were always as tough. The only thing that is different here from, let's say, the Hollywood independent film system is that they have better actors. They have actors who are just better at their craft. Not just that, they are also willing to do all kinds of stuff, and not just do stuff that enhances their brand. I think that's the key difference for independent filmmakers in India, because ultimately a large part of the financing kahin par bhi rests finally on who is in your film, and the budgets get decided. And here, who do you cast? Like who do you go to who will get you some sort of money to be able to make the film well, and yet will not end up just pissing all over your film.
But like, does that mean that, say, for example, if a Hrithik Roshan doesn't do a YRF spy universe movie and does like an indie film, that will shift the balance?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it will.
So it's the buck stops at the star.
To a large extent. I'm not saying it's just the stars, but a key factor, if we look at the Hollywood independent scene, which is also struggling now, it's going through a churn, but it is alive, and it will stay alive because they have a bunch of 40 to 50 really interesting actors. I mean, you look at Safdie doing Smashing Machine with Dwayne Johnson now. So I'm saying they're willing to push the envelope with a Safdie. And the Safdies have worked with all kinds of guys, not just Dwayne Johnson, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's heartbreaking because today only Dwayne Johnson put out a post saying that Smashing Machine hasn't made the numbers that my films do, but I didn't expect them to. I did it for different reasons, and I hope that they do later. But I mean, again, going back to Hrithik Roshan, just as an example, that when his Vikram Vedha had flopped, so he had said that this is not the kind of film that I want to do anymore because that's not what my audience wants. So, what is this like? Why is there such a vast difference between these two approaches?
I would not like to discuss this because it's futile.
Yeah.
To talk about people who are influenced, who are essentially closed in a room with 10 voices that create echo chambers for them, and probably have very little connection left with reality. I find it a waste of time to talk to them, or talk about them, especially in an era where we are seeing DiCaprio work with Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah.
And that film is in theaters now.
Yeah.
And it has
doing
done
very well.
Yeah, it has done really well for both of them. So, it's a futile conversation. It's ये जो लोग बोलते हैं मेरी ऑडियंस वो नहीं है, वो नहीं बोल रहे हैं, वो इनसिक्योर है, और उनके आसपास जो 10 लोग हैं उस कमरे में उतने ही लोग बोल रहे हैं. बाहर ऑडियंसेस कहाँ जा रही हैं, क्या बदल रहा है, किसी को नहीं पता. The audiences are now watching everything from all around the world. Yeah, they want to see different kinds of stuff, and we are already seeing that play out with COVID. Just probably वो बहाना बन गया है, but that is speeding the audience's disinterest in a certain kind of film. You can see is quickening, and you're seeing the results of that bear on the 4 or 5 or 6 big names that we like to call them. तो वो दिख रहा है, वो अपना वो it'll take its own path and it'll find its own destination very soon.
Now I also ask about independent cinema because the two names that you mentioned, those who are so passionate about cinema, say Anurag Kashyap, who is doing a lot of films, but even his films aren't getting the audience that it used to, like Nishanchi, or like Dibakar Banerjee, who can't get a film out, like Tees hasn't released. So that struggle, if they have to face, then what about like new indie filmmakers? Then where is the hope?
Yeah, I think we need to have a bigger conversation because film बनाने का act क्या ही है और filmmaker कौन ही है. The bigger struggle is not for independent filmmakers. The bigger struggle is for the rickshaw wala, for the परचून की दुकान वाला, for the coolie at the railway station. Those are the guys that are really struggling.
Yeah.
That is what is wrong, and that's why independent cinema is suffering. It's not because a few people are deciding not to do films with a few people. Of course, ये है, difficult है. But at the end of the day, I do not forget my own privilege even for a second. I'm in a privileged position to sit here, have this conversation with you and say, यार independent cinema को ना कोई fund नहीं कर रहा है. No one owes me anything. It's my battle. If I have chosen to make a certain kind of film, I need to figure out a way. Yes. And I need to process the truth that there is no structural support in this country. Nahi hai. Now, that is done. Now, if you still want to do this, how do you do this? But yes, we all do need to talk about the larger questions of what is playing at that bigger socio-political level, which is affecting the cultural landscape to this extent. Yeah. It's not just with film, it's the overall cultural landscape and the diminishing possibilities of being able to have any sort of nuanced conversation. That is what we are losing. Yeah. I think that's what we need to talk about.
True. Finally, I want to end by just talking briefly about Agra. We'll have a larger discussion, but for now, I just wanted to know that, the most fascinating bit, because I haven't seen the film yet, but the most fascinating bit is having Rahul Roy in the film. How did that happen?
He cast himself.
Okay.
He didn't give me a choice. Okay. He was, I usually conduct 3-month workshops, and the first 1.5 month I have options for every character. So there are three daddies, which Rahul Roy's character was. So, and there are three of every primary character, and they are all playing. So you're figuring who goes best with who, because also it was a principal cast of 7. So in that atmosphere, for someone with the pedigree of Rahul Roy, with the history that he had, to come in every morning at 9 a.m. and be the last one to leave at around 10:30 every night, just that had me hooked very early on. And after that, I remember that, one of these days, because him and I were the last ones left on every day in the workshop, we were sitting having a chai and having a conversation about something I don't remember. But in that conversation, he turned around to me and said, you know what, ये पिक्चर मैं ही करूंगा, और कोई नहीं करेगा, मैं बता रहा हूँ आपको, ये मैं ही करूंगा. I think that made the final decision for me, because I was like, he wants to do this so bad, and he's putting so much into this, that he is probably the right choice. And also some characteristics, like his life lived was also very close to what the part demanded. All of it put together, but the dedication of the man is exemplary.
How did he even enter and the casting scene? Like, how did he even end up at the workshop? Is like, where did the idea of having him come from?
I mean, we always knew that we probably need some sort of a face in the casting of 7, because 7 primary character हैं, बाकियों में कोई भी इतना prominent नहीं था. Now there's Ruhani, who's a big star down south, but at that point she was also just starting out. So I felt like we needed a little something. So we were, going around talking to a few people who were not completely unknown. So during that process, we also spoke to Rahul, and he was looking to transition into something which was more interesting than what he usually does. So that led to it.
Okay. Looking forward to Agra.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.